Hello there, welcome back. This is Sheepishly here once again, and today we have the second and probably the final update for the Deadeye Grenadier character I've been playing for the past week. This character has performed absolutely fantastically in the endgame. I would 100% recommend this build to anyone who's looking for the Grenadier playstyle. You would have seen in the clip before, we've taken down a tier 16, which is the highest tier of map boss there is, with absolutely no issue whatsoever. We're rocking some fantastic defense numbers here. We have 2.1k life. I think in the end game something like 2.2, 2.5 is what you should aim for, so I still have a bit ways to go on my gear, but 2.1 feels perfectly comfortable in tier 15, tier 16 maps. I have 31% armor. This little bit of armor is actually quite nice because we have actually no physical damage mitigation besides the armor, and we're rocking a whopping 82% evasion. And this is actually the unbuff state. When you're mapping, what you're going to have is that you're going to have full tailwind, and once I stack tailwind up, we actually go up to 86%. Zoomy build as well because of our tailwind and because of our ascendancy as the Deadeye. Moving down to resistances, we have all 4 resistance fully capped. We have fire, cold lightning, as well as chaos, all at 75%. Now, if you're a newer player and you are finding yourself struggling in maps, the damage spike is quite a lot coming from campaign to maps. What's most likely happening is that your resistances are not capped. I would personally work on getting my fire, cold, and lightning capped first, and then working on your chaos afterwards. I think you can make do with like something like 20, 30 chaos rise all the way up to tier 14, tier 15 maps, but after that you really want to get chaos capped because there's actually a lot of chaos damage in POE too. Coming on to our gear, we're actually running fairly basic gear. I might just hover over each one of them and give a brief explanation as to what they are. Firstly is a crossbow. I corrupted this one to have 3 sockets, which is the only reason why this crossbow is even remotely competitive in the end game. Unfortunately, I forgot to quality it fully to 20%, so I am missing maybe 5 attack damage there. So when you're looking for a crossbow, attack speed, critical strike chance, none of them matters, because as a grenadier, the only thing you care about is the physical damage roll, which we have 158 to 485, which is absolutely fantastic. As a rule of thumb, if the top end of your crossbow hits something like 450 to 500, you're going to be hitting the damage numbers you need to do tier 15 and 16 quite comfortably. It will be better if you have plus projectile gems, which I don't have at the moment, and it will be even better if this is on a bombard crossbow base, which has +1 grenade projectiles. Unfortunately, our crossbow doesn't have either of these, but it does a very nice physical damage roll. I think this is something like a maybe 80 exalt, 100 exalt crossbow, I'm not too sure, but there you go. I think that's the level of investment you do need to have in your weapon for the end game. Helmet, this is Root 2's Tech Radiant Grief. I think this helmet when I bought it initially was like 8 exalts, but nowadays you can find it for 1 exalt pretty cheap. And what's good about this is the enemy in your presence are ignited as though dealt 100 base fire damage. This makes the gas grenades explode without you doing anything, because the moment the gas comes out, the enemies around you, and this is like a massive range by the way, enemies in your presence is like the whole screen practically. The moment the gas comes out, the enemy's gonna, the enemies are already ignited, and the ignited enemy will trigger the gas explosion. So instead of having a 2-button playstyle with gas grenades, explosive grenades, or gas grenades and explosive shot, you just use gas grenades and the gas cloud will explode automatically. This helmet is the quality of life that is sorely missing from, I think, my last update. It is actually making the build so much smoother to play, and I would not recommend to play this build without it. This amulet, I actually picked it up off the ground. It just has a high life roll, some resistances, and a projectile skill gems roll. It's nothing too fancy, but the mana regen is very nice for this build. Sometimes in boss fights, you do run out of mana if you don't look after how you use the mana floss. You have to be very careful with how you use the mana floss on this build, because mana is a little bit of an issue. But this 60% really helps it quite a lot. I wish it wasn't on an intelligence amulet base though. If this was on a strength amulet base, that would be actually perfect for me. I have the high alert notable allocated. This is a fairly cheap anoint, that's why I went for it. It's just a little bit of evasion when you're mapping, which makes you a bit more which makes it a little bit more comfortable when you're going through things. Coming on to our rings are pretty bad. So Both my rings really, there's only 2 mods that I was looking for. So on this ring, I have 29 dexterity and 34 cold resistance, just to help me fix my attributes as well as my cold rest quite a bit. Nothing to see here. This ring is pretty cheap. I think I got it for like 4 exalts or something like that. Nowadays, it will be even cheaper. On the right hand side, we have a very bad ring as well. Actually, this is not even exalted slammed. I don't know why. But essentially, I was struggling for attributes, which I'm not anymore. When I bought this ring, I was struggling for attributes, so I just bought a massive attributes. This is 51 attributes ring. This was actually like 4 exalts as well, so you can actually shop around quite a lot for some very nice rings actually nowadays, especially as people are starting to use expedition crafting. You have a lot of nice rare gear for cheap that's gonna help you resistance cap your character. The chest, I got really lucky. So the chest, the base is amazing by the way. So if you're a strength and dex character, make sure you get the rogue armor base because it gives you 66 additional max life. Here I got a very nice max life roll, 163, not too bad, some lightning res, and most importantly 21 chaos resistance, which is absolutely humongous for this build. I corrupted this armor and I was very lucky to get 3 sockets, and I socketed 3 of the soul core of Tacti, not too sure, but this is the soul core that you can get for. It's only 2 exalts when I bought them. Really, you're looking for the 7% chaos resistance here. So altogether, this chest armor from the socketed runes as well as the explicit mods gives me a whopping 42% chaos rest. If I take this off, as you can see that my chaos rest is absolutely demolished. This chest is absolutely fantastic. It fixes so much of my issues, gives me armor, gives me evasion rating as well as chaos rest. I could not ask for a better piece. And the base was only like, 2 exalts, so yeah. The belt I was quite lucky with. I bought this purely to fix my cold and chaos res, so I just bought so I paid like about 5 exalts for the 31 cold res as well as 17 chaos res. I got lucky and exalted slammed on the 108 life. Sometimes you do get lucky, so this belt's probably worth like 20x or something like that. Nothing too fancy besides it. It's not the best base though. What you want is a fine belt, which has 0.17 flask charges per second or something like that. That's really going to help you ensure that you have sufficient mana flasks during boss fights. I would recommend, if you can, to go for a fine belt if you can. The boots was the same piece as last video. I don't know if I showed the boots in the last video, but yeah, well, it's invasion boots. I just have really nice resistance on it, and then as well as 25% movement speed. There's no life on this, unfortunately, and I think it's full prefixes and suffixes. Yeah, so I can't even slam on it. Without life, these boots are fairly cheap as well. I think 5 exalts. Lastly, my gloves. I also got lucky with my gloves. I slammed the extra socket onto it, but I forgot to quality the gloves before I corrupted it, which is a massive mistake. So this pair of gloves just has massive resistances. I think we're 40 fire, 14 cold, and 36 lightning. We're looking at something like, what's that, 76, 80, 90% resistances, and 74 max life. Yeah, so this pair of gloves I paid like 10x for, which I think is well worth it, especially because I got lucky on the chaos resistance slam as well. Actually, I've gone through the gear because we haven't slammed this ring yet. Let's just slam the ring. We do have some exalts to burn, so we can get quite lucky here because we have 2 prefixes open. So what we're looking for is max life and max mana. So let's see what we get. Cold damage, that's not too bad. And next one, fire damage. The fire damage actually nice because my build do a lot of fire damage. So hey, I'm not complaining. There you go. We've managed to improve our gear by a tiny little bit. Fantastic. Going through the gem subs, what I have is fairly stock standard, I would say. So oil grenades, this is what you want to do on bosses and rares to slow them and apply fire exposure. We have it linked with persistence, which gives more skill effect duration, so we don't have to reapply oil grenades as often when we fight bosses. Strip away, which is absolutely fantastic. It increases the effect of exposure, so we're getting more resistance reduction on bosses and rares. Lastly, we have maim, just to slow them a little bit more, because you can see that maimed enemies suffer from 30% slower movement speed. Oil grenades is quite nice, but it's more of a utility skill, so if you don't remember to toss them, that's fine. It's really a minor damage boost here and there, if you need it, especially on bosses, I guess. I actually got this to level 19. The quality doesn't really do much because the quality only increases the area effect of the gas clouds per second. So because we're instantly detonating all the gas clouds, the quality actually doesn't do too much to help out clear. So I haven't used Gem Cutter's Prisms on this one. In terms of links, we have Immolate, Scatter Shot, Fire Penetration, Fire Infusion. These are the standard for support gems. I think everyone who's running gas grenades will be running them. The nice thing also is that all these 4 grenades has no additional cost applied to them, so mana is a bit of a problem for this build. So these 4 is pretty much stable for the gas grenade setup. On my last one, I took Primal Armament. The reason I did that is because I have no plus projectile gems on my crossbow. So my mana is actually okay to deal with. I don't really run out of mana flask. It's very rare that I would run out of mana flask in a boss fight. But what a lot of people are running, especially if you have plus projectile gems on your crossbow, you take off the Primal Armament and instead you would apply. And instead you would put Inspiration here just to make sure you can spam cast your gas grenades as much as possible. The actual damage from Primal Armament is nice, but it is not worth it if you run out of mana flask halfway through a boss fight and you can no longer do any DPS whatsoever. That's probably one of the worst feelings in this game, and I do not recommend it at all. Flash Grenades, it's a nice combo for when you're trying to stun bosses, as well as trying to stop enemies from rushing at you and surrounding you when you're mapping. I have a link with Overpower, Discombobulate, as well as Ruthless. I think Overpower and Ruthless is pretty much non-negotiable. Discombobulate is really good as well, because what Daze does is Daze will increase the stun build-up on enemies, so you're going to find on bosses, you're going to stun them all the time, which gives you free DPS window for your gas grenades. Very nice. Explosive grenades, I don't really use this anymore. The only time I've ever used explosive grenades is when the enemies are ignite proof, which means that I cannot explode my gas clouds just using my Radiant Grief helmet. But that's only happened to me twice in all the time I've leveled up to level 88, so yeah, I just have it there for fun. You don't really need to do any links with these. Cluster grenades, this one I would actually like to have 5 linked it, but I just haven't got around to doing it. I would also have liked to use Gem Cutter's Prisms to reduce the fuse duration, but then again, I haven't got around to doing that as well. This is quite nice for bosses when you toss down your gas grenades and you toss down your stun grenades in the downtime whilst you're waiting for the grenades to recharge. Just toss down some cluster grenades. They're not gonna break the game or completely demolish the boss, but it's a nice bit of damage, and why not? It's free damage, right? We have Fast Forward just to counteract the effects of the long fuse a little bit, which has 50% increased skill effect duration, and then finally we have a little payload so that there's a chance for the skill to activate a second time, which is absolutely fantastic. I think payload is one of the best skills to use with cluster grenades, because you see how cluster grenade has primary grenades as well as mini grenades. I think payload works on both of them, which means that both the primary and secondary grenades have a 50% chance to activate a second time. If I'm wrong about that, please don't let me know in the comments, but that's how I believe it works, which means that it is actually a tremendous amount of damage increase, right? Because if you get the 50% activation on your primary grenades, it's going to split out all the mini grenades again, which again have another chance to, 50% chance to detonate one more time. This is more than a 50% more damage multiplier when you think about it. Moving on, Explosive Shot, again, I don't really use it. It's there to detonate my gas cloud if needs be, but that rarely happens. Onto the auras, we're running Wind Dancer, which is actually one of the most important auras you want to run. It gives you a whopping 18% more evasion rating per stage, and it has up to 4 stages if you use GCPs on this one. Unfortunately, I don't have this one leveled up to level 17 or 18. I don't know why. So I am losing out on a little bit of evasion rating, but I will fix that after this video. Try to get this as high level as you can, because it is absolutely fantastic in terms of the bonuses it provides you. For Gale Force, we don't really crit, so it's not as important for us as, say, a Lightning Arrow build. Lastly, I run Attrition instead of a Herald of Ash. So Herald of Ash would be a clearing setup, so if you guys haven't tried it, I would recommend you guys to try it. See which one you like better. Attrition is an underrated buff, in my opinion, compared to Heralds. I know a lot of people like to run Heralds. People think that they have so much damage to rares, to bosses already, they don't need it, which is fair. But I think there's 2 points to be made here. One, no one is playing optimally where we blow up the rare mob the moment we see them. You have to run up to it, you have to throw out your grenades, you have to wait for your grenades to detonate, you might have missed your grenades, and then the mob might have run past your grenades, you have to throw the grenades again. Throughout all that time, attrition's there to help you build up damage against rare unique monsters. It's just free damage, and we don't have any other source of culling strike, especially with bosses, so yeah, it's just a very nice kind of buff to have. And secondly, the only time when I die nowadays in maps is when I fight against a very dangerous rare mob or a unique enemy, which is the map bosses. All the wide mobs and stuff like that don't really die to them anymore because of the gear upgrades, because of how much evasion I have, because of how much armor I have, and because I have a stun grenade. If they rush at me, I just chuck a stun grenade out and they're all gonna disappear, right? So, and they're all gonna get dazed and they're not gonna attack me anymore. So I think attrition is hugely underrated, and I would recommend all Grenadier characters to try it because it does make fighting these rare and unique mobs so much easier. Lastly, coming over to the skill tree, I still haven't gotten my 4th ascension yet. I've been holding off on doing Sanctum because I think the boss is really hard, and I don't know if my bow is quite up to scratch. I am trying to farm up to a maybe 200 or 300 exalt crossbow before I attempt it. I do not want to spend an hour on Sanctum only to fail at the boss mechanic. So that's that. In terms of pathing, nothing has really changed since the last time I've shown you guys, but I have cleaned up some pathing up top here. I no longer take Devastation. I come over here to grab Backup Plan, and then I grab Defiance here to scale both my armor and evasion. We pick up the Incendiary as well as Smoke Inhalation nodes, since the majority of damage is fire and penetration is always nice. And lastly, what I want to highlight is that this little wheel here for armor and evasion is very efficient. General's Bindings gain 8% evasion rating as extra armor is fantastic because we have something like 13,000 evasion, so this is giving quite a bit of armor. And lastly, +1 evasion rating per 1 armor on equipped gloves. That's why I have an armor base in my glove slot. Yeah, because I get the evasion bonus from it. Coming over here, we also have taken up Careful Consideration. Again, this gives us 100% increase in evasion rating if we haven't been hit recently. Again, when you're running through maps, you're not going to get hit by the mobs. You have such a high evasion rating. This just makes the general playstyle much more comfortable. It's also very synergistic with both your Gale Winds as well as your Wind Dancer. The whole point of the build is to not get hit, and if you do get hit, you have 75% all resistances. That's going to mitigate the damage. You also have 2000 armor that could mitigate the damage, physical damage as well. Absolutely a fantastic defensive layer. Just keep in mind, I'm probably not the best Grenadier character. I tend to shoot my grenades way too far. So by the way, if you guys don't know, say if I want to save the map device is the rare mob, right? If I just hover over the rare mob and I toss my grenades, you see how it bounces a little bit past them? What you want to do is that you actually want to target maybe about like halfway between yourself and the rare mob, right? And then your grenades will explode right on top of the map device. So this works even if you're like very far away from them, so about halfway right here. You see, your gas clouds will explode right in front of them, and all the mobs will be running towards you, right? So what you're meant to do when clearing, and that's gonna make your and this goes to any, and this tip goes to any grenade characters, is that you see the mob running at you, you want to fire quite close to yourself, right? And as it runs through the gas cloud, it will detonate or whatever grenade you're using. If you're hovering over the mobs, which is sometimes I get lazy, that's what I tend to do, you're gonna overshoot the grenades. The mobs are gonna run past the grenades, you're going to do 0 damage to them because now there's 2 res running at you and you're just trying to run for your life, right? So a little bit of mechanical tip for you guys: don't shoot a grenade on the mobs, shoot them in front of them because the grenades do bounce a little bit before they detonate. Okay, thanks for watching. Please give me a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. This is Sheepishly. I hope you have a fantastic POE 2 early access journey ahead of you. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.